Welcome back to the Fermented Files and your hosts,
Karolis,
and Virgil.
Ruchila.
Welcome to the 6th episode,
Oh yeah.
and my sincere apologies for having missed one. So Happy New Year, I guess.
Oh yeah.
But I do have to say that's because Carlos was forcing me to work under inhuman conditions of me being sick, and then we couldn't release the episode because all we could hear was.
This is fake news.
No, it actually happened. We'll make this.
Some of it did happen. Not the part where I made you do it.
You did.
No.
We'll make the sniffly episode available in the future when we're out of content. Yeah, so I guess let's just get into it.
Oh yeah. What do you have for today?
Well,
What's on the menu?
I cannot answer that question because that would be extremely inappropriate. I do have to talk about trigger warnings though, finally. It's been a few where we didn't have any, at least on my part. So today we will have
Blood.
blood,
Okay.
death,
Okay.
sexual violence,
Not okay.
physical violence, and all of these things will be against children.
Oh.
But
Starting the new year strong, I see.
yeah, no, because you know what? I thought usually I just like try to find these like most obscure, weird crimes and stuff. And today I was like, you know what? Let's just take like a well-known case that I was never ever personally really interested in. But then I started reading about it, and I was like, actually, this is sick. So hopefully, you'll probably know who this is about. So I hope that this is going to sort of, you know, make you enjoy this particular story more, or
Yeah.
like it more as it did me. Not that you should like something as awful, but anyway. So today we're going to finally leave the US.
Oh yes.
And we're going to go to my second home, which is the United Kingdom.
Okay.
And we're going to have a case from there. And this case is interesting because it's about the youngest serial killer in the UK.
Okay.
Have you heard the name Mary Bell?
No, I don't think so.
Have you seen this little angel? Girly.
Maybe, yeah.
So
Something.
So angelic.
Is it? Okay.
So anyway, today we're talking about Mary Bell, and you might have noticed that unusually I didn't start somewhere in the middle of the story and then went back 20 years.
At the end of the story and then going.
So really why I'm not doing that is obviously because Mary is the main character, but it's also because this case touches upon what, as you will know, is much of an interest to me personally, because we've talked about it many times before, and maybe we'll even have a chance to discuss it at the end. But this case is kind of about nature versus nurture.
Oh, your favorite thing.
Yes, one of the few. So anyway, let's get into it. So first I'll just sort of tell you, the beginnings, the background of our little Mary Bell. So Mary Bell was born in Newcastle. She was born in Newcastle on May 26th, 1957, which makes her a what? A Gemini.
May what?
27th.
Oh yeah.
26th.
So as we know, Geminis are one of the
Yes.
one of the
Exactly.
signs for serial killers.
Yep. So this is like, fitting. She was born in an area that was called Scotswood, which I think is the west sort of end of Newcastle, and that was known as literally the roughest area of one of the roughest towns. And rough, it is rough because I think it was mostly industrial and whatever back in the 60s, so a lot of alcohol, a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So she was born in literally the worst area of the worst city, and then she also happens to live on the worst street of the worst area in the worst
Jesus Christ.
city.
She's so unlucky.
Yeah, so just to paint you a picture of sort of Scotswood, where our story takes place, it was literally at that time a slum. There were just like social issues of all kinds all around. A lot of crime. Literally, all of the men that would, most of them would work in factories, would then go to the pubs, get absolutely smashed drunk, and then beat their wives and each other and whatever. So, police was literally more often in that area than they weren't. Most families obviously lived in poverty, and there were a lot of obviously domestic disturbances, stuff like that. Um, I read somewhere that at that time women, when they would do like their washing of the clothes, they wouldn't put the clothes to dry outside, even though you lived in like a private house,
Yeah.
because those clothes would just get stolen.
Okay.
So, you know. But yeah, so Mary was born into that lovely picture already. And what is more, she was born to a very interesting set of characters. So first was her dad, Billy Bell. That's like a cute ring. Billy Bell, who we're not totally sure he was her father, but he like took her as his child, and she took his surname, and he was like generally loving towards the children, but also an absolutely raging alcoholic and like a notorious criminal. Like had multiple stints in prison and like armed robbery, stuff like that. But really the most sort of key person in the story, apart from Mary, is her mother, Betty. So Betty at first, I think, worked at a factory.
Yeah.
And it wasn't unusual that she would take up lovers, like even though she was married to Billy. And eventually, somehow, that transitioned into Mary's mom, Betty, taking up sex work full time. And she would often like go and do her work in Glasgow for some reason, which is Scotland, which is quite, I don't know, not that close, but anyway. So she would sometimes be gone for like days at a time. And she was like an interesting character generally, like very manic. Sometimes I think once tried to give Mary her child for adoption, sold her like to some woman that couldn't have children through an adoption agency, like sent the child away, and then changed her mind, and then her sister had to go and get that child and like steal
Jesus
it from whoever took
Steal it?
Well, like take it like forcefully, because obviously the child was already sold. So, you know, and this was quite young, I think, like 2 or 3 years. Mary was at that time. And other times Betty's family would be like, look, you're clearly in no position to look after the child, let us like have her and like take care of her. And then she would be like, no, absolutely not. So it was like very manic, like you hate the child, you want to put it up for adoption, but you also kind of want to have it. She was also like quite abusive, the mom. But I think once she dropped Mary from like a first floor window. Well, first floor, and obviously in England is kind of our second floor.
Oh, okay.
So I know it doesn't sound scary, first floor, but still. And then there were multiple occasions of like Mary having to go to a hospital because she would be plied with like tablets, like sleeping tablets.
Jesus Christ.
And like Betty did all of this for some reason. So this was sort of the beginning. Oh, and I think just that there's a story that I think literally like 30 minutes after Mary was born to Betty, doctors tried to give her to Betty to hold, as they do with newborns.
Yeah.
And Betty was like, take the thing away from me. So, you know, she wasn't the best mother, I guess you could say.
Definitely not getting Mother of the Year award.
But let's very quickly go back to the sex work. So obviously once she became full-time sex worker, and when she wasn't in Glasgow but rather in Newcastle, Betty would bring all of these men that she was servicing, let's say, back home.
Working from home.
Yeah, working from home before Corona. And Mary would oftentimes be there. And so she saw a lot of like what was going on, nitty-gritty, whatever. And eventually Betty kind of started forcing Mary into doing that with old men, and Mary at this time was 4 years old.
4 years old?
Yeah. So she mostly kept doing like kept that stuff going like on at home. Very rarely she would take Mary to like the client's homes, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing is that immediately after this would happen to Mary, then Betty would be like really good and nice to her and like buy her sweets and crisps and whatever, but never sort of lasted long, and she would just go back to being shit to Mary. So that was sort of like a very brief picture of the environment that she was inserted into from literally the very beginning of her life. So the one comes as a shock to you that from very early on, Mary started exhibiting like odd behavior, I guess you could say. She would often, in the playground, like in sandpits and stuff, strangle other children. Like literally would be like, because children generally feared her because she wasn't like very pleasant and she was a bit aggressive at times. So children would sort of start going away, like not wanting to be with her. So she would come up to them and like if she didn't like them, she would start strangling them, which is, okay. And she was like from very young age. There was this documentary where they spoke to like her childhood friends, and they were all like 4 or 5 years old at the time, and they were all scared of her. But mostly because they said she had this like very captivating, gaze. Essentially, she had these like beautiful, very deep blue eyes. But, like they were very scary. Like they just walk onto you, and you're in trouble because she's like manic one minute and like normal the next. Oh yeah, the other thing she was doing, she was stubbing out cigarettes on other children. But this was, I think, a bit older. She was 8 years old and in school, and this girl came to the principal's office, and she had like a mark on her cheek, and she was like, Mary just stubbed the cigarette out on me. Which, how do you get cigarettes at the age of 8 anyway? But I guess industrial area or whatever. And then obviously the principal would confront Mary about this, and she would be like, yeah, I did. So what? What are you gonna do about it? So from sort of very young age, she was quite violent, quite notorious. But the problem is, everyone knew about this, but no one did anything. Okay, so no counseling, no nothing, no sort of even reprimanding her, I guess. Because you would imagine if a child in your school does this, you would get like...
But I mean, if...
You expel them or something?
But if it's such a rough city or even like the district, as you said, so maybe that's kind of normal behavior. Maybe everyone does it.
But that's the point. That's why that's the point. It wasn't normal because everyone, like all of the children, were scared of her. So you have rough. As is in that area, and then you have Mary literally taking it up a notch.
Yeah, kind of fair. I guess at that time they didn't know what's counseling, but
maybe
either way they could do something.
Definitely something, but so eventually she met this other girl that was her neighbor, whose name was Norma Bell. Again, Bell, but they were not related. It was just like, I guess, a common surname in these parts or something. So Norma Bell, and this is very sad to me because as I was everywhere where I read about this, everywhere where I looked, like watched documentaries and stuff, the only thing people would say to describe this Norma Bell was that she was not bright. She was like mentally, I guess, challenged to an extent. Yeah, she was 2 years older than Mary, but she was like... Mary was extremely intelligent for like a young child. She was very, very sort of intelligent, very talented, like creatively, etc. Read and she could do reading and writing like way above her sort of age. And this Norma was like complete opposite. Like probably she would have been 10, 11, but probably mentally around 7 or something.
Yeah.
So if we were to use like a comparison of some sort, we could say that Norma was the muscle and Mary was the brain. They became besties and sort of oftentimes would now together scare other children, like strangle them and whatever, although Norma was always obviously just doing what was told but not really like instigating it. And now we finally come to where it escalates and the grand sort of finale of the reign of terror of Mary Bell. So on May 11th, 1968, so she would have been, 11, 10, 11, depending on... Oh, still 10, because this was before her birthday. Mary and Norma lured a 3-year-old from, like, the general area to an air raid shelter. I think they did this under the guise that we will go and get some sweeties. Because at that time it was perfectly normal for, like, children to just roam around unsupervised, because of the kind of area it was as well. Like, no one would care.
Yeah.
So they were running around, and this 3-year-old child goes with them to get some candy. But where he ends up is in a disused air shelter. And they then pushed him off the roof of that air raid shelter and sort of injured him. But he was later sort of just found wandering the streets, quite dazed, and because, you know, he hit his head and whatever. So nothing awful happened to this child, but obviously they did this to him. They pushed him off the roof. Police obviously was called, but no one could prove anything because it was like a 3-year-old's word. You know, no one saw anything. And then the next day, they also, this Norma and Mary, tried to strangle not 1, not 2, but 3 girls in a sandpit.
The next day.
Literally the next day.
Very productive.
Yeah. Why? I have no idea, but they were just strangling children left, right, and center.
Okay.
Obviously, again, still no one was really, like, harmed long term. But yes, police was called. But no one took an action because, you know, it's children, especially in that time, whatever. They're just
children
like,
games.
Children will be children, I guess. So we then get to exactly 2 weeks later, which is May 25th, 1968. Martin Brown, who was 4 years of age at that time, went out playing with his friends as he always did. His mom obviously didn't think about it much and whatever. And around 5 p.m., someone came to mom, knocked on her door, and was like, there was an accident. So they all run to this derelict building, and she finds this sort of workman, you know, like some sort of, I don't know, a builder or like a layman or whatever, holding this Martin, this tiny baby, and the man is crying, and the baby's and the boy's all like gray in the face. So obviously the ambulance was called, and they came and take him to the nearest hospital, but he was pronounced DOA, dead on arrival. Oh, you know that. You watch enough Grey's Anatomy. But because there was literally just like a small, I think, trail of blood coming from his mouth, but nothing else was suspicious. He was just like laying on the second floor of a derelict building, and because it was usual for them to play there, there were many theories, but like nothing, like it wasn't treated as suspicious.
Yeah.
So they sort of closed the death. I think a day or 2 days after this happened, police were called again because a nursery, which happened to be very close to Mary's and Norma's house, was broken into. And some pieces of, I guess you could say, evidence was left behind. And that was crumpled up pieces of paper which had writings on them. And these writings said, "We killed so we can come back. We killed Martin Brown." And there was a third one, I don't remember. But obviously they thought, oh, it's just a prank. Someone's like super mean and is now, you know, sort of like playing on the death of the young boys to sort of scare everyone, you know. And at the same time also, Mary, in her school journal, because she apparently wrote in her daily journal about the murder, at that time, the death of the boy.
Yeah.
But underneath the writings, she drew this picture of him laying on the floor, surrounded by like tablets and like a little bottle saying tablet on it, which at first they did think that the boy overdosed. I forgot about this. They did think that the boy somehow overdosed because there were a lot of tablets playing around.
Yeah.
But then it proved to be that actually just the previous tenant of that house that was now said to be demolished just left them behind, so it wasn't that. But she drew that picture of him surrounded by tablets, laying actually in the same way that he was found. And then next to him, she drew a worksman finding the body, which obviously was a bit strange. But anyway, So they sort of closed that death as like non-suspicious or whatever, and then 2 months went by, and on July 31st, 1968, another 3-year-old, Brian Howe, was also invited by Mary and Norma to go play with them. They took him to this. They had this big wasteland near the area that they lived in. So they took him to the wasteland, and then sort of I think came back home without him, and we're like, oh, we don't know where he is. His parents. This is mind-boggling to me that he's 3 years old. Like, I think 3-year-olds are like, they're so baby. Like,
Yeah.
why could you let your child just go and like play, even like unsupervised if he's 3 years old? But
I guess it was
yeah,
kind of
it's just
normal
so
in that time,
strange.
but still.
Yeah, so obviously at some point, you know, the parents were like, well, he's not come home, so we need to search for him. So they send, you know, local people looking for him, and like dogs and whatever. And eventually, at around 1 a.m. on what would have been August 1st, his body was found in that wasteland. And this time, it was very apparent that this was actually a murder, because his hair was cut, but like in some places, just like in sort of weird patterns. And his body, his legs especially, had these like stab wounds in them.
Jesus Christ.
And then the police concluded that obviously the same scissors that were used to
Yeah.
cut his hair were used to like stab his legs, at like an attempt, I think they concluded, to like make almost like a symbol, like carve a symbol into the skin.
Yeah.
So that happened, and then obviously because this was now a suspicious death, they did a post-mortem, and that post-mortem revealed that this Brian was actually strangled. And they were like, wait, well actually, this is like a very similar age, very similar circumstances, except obviously this one had post-mortem, you know, stab wounds, but they both otherwise like didn't really have a cause of death. So they were like, this is similar to 2 months ago, this other boy.
Yeah.
So they reopened Martin's case. And because of, and obviously now that it was, you know, an open case for this Brian guy, the pathologist was like way more thorough in investigating it, and he concluded that especially the, you know, the stab wounds, actually that could have only been inflicted by a child, because I guess, you know, they have a lot of ways to determine who made certain marks and how, but they essentially said this was work of a child, which obviously is shocking even back then.
I mean, and Mary, what, is 11 now?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So the police immediately then announced that they were actually looking for a child, and there were hundreds of local kids in the area, and they were all now suspects essentially in the case, which is so bizarre. The interesting thing is, and this will this will be explained, I guess, later, but the real killer obviously didn't know this at the time, but she wasn't really hiding at all. Even if you look at interviews with the police investigators and whatever who worked at the case, well, not on the case at the time, they said there was always, whatever address to the public they gave, whatever sort of press conference, there was always one small girl sort of pushing everyone to like come to the front and listen intently to every word or like every new update they would give about the case. And then finally, yeah.
I mean, 11 years old.
Run! Welcome back after a short break. I'm so sorry because you were just about to ask a question. I don't know if you remember.
What were you talking just before our ad break.
We were talking about the fact that whenever police was giving addresses and whatever, Mary would.
Oh yeah. So an 11-old years child was even allowed to like the conferences.
Yeah.
That's what the fuck.
I mean, why wouldn't they be? I guess.
I mean, they are describing a child being murdered by a child,
but they
and they're like, oh, she can chill her. She can like play in the sides.
Actually, this is interesting, and I forgot about this. So after the first boy, Martin, was found dead, so Martin's mom used to go to her sister's house, and Mary and this Norma and whoever, maybe other children, sometimes occasionally visited the house, so they would meet this Mary and Martin's mom. And whenever they would meet, and this gives me Daniel LaPlante vibes, Mary would ask that mother, how do you feel? Not how are you feeling, but how do you feel? Do you miss him? And I think on the day of the funeral, apparently Mary came to the door of Martin's mom, knocked on it, and she was like, can I see Martin? And mom was like, well, no, you know he's dead. And Mary was like, yes, I know he's dead. I want to see him in the coffin. And Martin's mom was like, okay, this is creepy. She closed the door and sort of never spoke to Mary really again. But I digress. So apart from Mary being very interested in like the public addresses of the police and stuff, there were also talks circulating amongst the local children that Mary was boasting in the playground to other kids that she strangled the boy.
Yeah.
After hearing this, the police naturally decided to speak to Mary. So they went to her house, and this first time, because she was obviously a minor, her dad, this Billy Bell, who I said was actually a piece of shit but also loved his children, he refused to let the police in and said, oh, I'm gonna launch my dog at you. And I think they had like this huge dog and whatever, so the police went away. What happened next? There was actually a witness to Brian's murder, so the second murder.
Yeah.
Sadly, it was an 8-year-old boy who had mental capacity of a 4-year-old.
Oh my god. Are all the children are?
But in any event, he saw the murder and he was able to, express himself enough that he explained to the police that actually Mary and Norma did this. And he said that the way that Mary would do it, she would massage the boy's neck and say, oh, you have a sore throat, let me help you. And she would massage it and sort of tighten her grip till the child would stop breathing. So naturally now, given this new evidence, Mary and Norma were both brought in for questioning. And what was very strange to them, again, this comes from documentaries where they spoke to actual people that interviewed her, that Mary, even though she was only 11 at this time, she was very calm, sort of, absolutely not shocked by the fact that she's a small child in police custody and whatever. And she would also be very sophisticated in how she sort of answered the questions. One investigator who worked with her even called her brain a computer brain, because he said you would ask her a question and not only she would sort of very eloquently answer that question, but she would then at the same time answer like the next 4 or 5 questions before they were even asked, because she just was able to conclude sort of the direction in which this questioning was going to go, which obviously I guess is a sign of superior intellect and whatever.
Oh yeah.
So obviously Mary denied everything immediately, and this didn't change. The general gist of what happened is Mary denied everything and said it was Norma, and Norma denied everything and said it was Mary. One of the sadder things is that Mary, while being investigated, she was very personable, even though she was very cold, I guess, for a child. Yeah. She was very personable and everyone liked her, and then she would just like go into chatting with people, the investigators. And the sad part is, more than wanting to answer the questions about murder, she kept asking where her mom was and whether mom was coming to visit and stuff like that, which is very sad because mom was probably in Glasgow.
Working from home.
Yeah. So the evidence at this point sort of kept piling up because we have that witness now saying, that Mary, I guess you can call it, massaged the boy's neck until he stopped breathing. Then finally they caught on about the notebooks, which I described, and it actually came to light that, I told you she drew that worksman finding the child, and the way that the child was positioned. That was actually never released to the public, so only really the killer or someone who would have been there at the time of that happening would have seen it. They also found those scissors that were used on Brian very near sort of the crime site. And so finally, on August 8th, which is less than 2 weeks, I think, after the second killing, both Mary and Norma were charged with at first just Brian's murder. During that time, due to their age, obviously they had to be, I guess, placed in custody.
Yeah.
But because they were babies, obviously you're not going to put them in the slammer. You're not going to have them in holding cells that you have criminals in. So after they would go through the whole day of questioning and stuff like that, they would then they were placed into some sort of a care, like people that were qualified to take care of, children and not let them out of their sight. And that's, again, everyone loved her. She made friends with everyone who looked after her, and sort of everyone was just taken aback by how smart she was and how, fun and intelligent and sort of personable and whatever. But other than that, even though she was very nice and very lovely to be around, she showed absolutely no remorse. And so finally, on the 5th of December 1968, this trial started. And I think it was a short trial, really. It was a 9-day trial, which obviously this wasn't wildly reported. I think BBC even banned reports about this case because, again, of the age. But the most sort of the main thing that everyone was upset about is that you have two children, one aged 11, one aged 13, and they're going through the criminal process in the UK, which is how are you going to have two children sat in the criminal courts and understand what the procedure? It's very complicated even for a grown-up mind.
Yeah.
But they're also the ones who have the right to defend themselves and whatever. And how are they going to understand what's going on? How that sort of allows them to have a just trial? So this was very controversial. But yeah, they eventually, I think, made some arrangements that are not usual to most criminal cases. They allowed Mary to sit her with her lawyer, so they could keep calming her down and speaking to her and whatever. But yeah, as I said, Mary generally showed no emotion really and was just listening to what was happening. The one time that she lost her cool was when during cross-examination, the barrister asked her about the allegations that were sort of circling around that she at one point, I think, strangled a pigeon, and for some reason that really upset her and she started crying and they had to stop the trial for a bit, which was very weird given the reason that she was in the courtroom in the first place. Absolutely no remorse for killing the boys, but there you have a pigeon. So sadly, well, not really sadly, but obviously it was obvious to everyone that she did do it. The only question was really how they would sentence her, and that all depended on the conclusions of child psychologists. You won't be surprised that she was, after thorough investigations by multiple child psychologists, that she was a psychopath with absolutely no emotional attachment to other people, and that's why she did what she did. So Mary naturally was found guilty of manslaughter, though, not murder, because, again, age and whatever. And Norma was acquitted of all charges just because everyone could see how, I'm sorry, but stupid and incapable she was. So one prosecutor called her, I think, a useless child. She just...
What the fuck?
It's everyone's really rude to Norma. But she was acquitted and essentially it was clear to everyone that she was only, even if participating, then only because she was manipulated by Mary to do this. So she went back home, all good. And Mary, as I said, was sentenced to detention at Her Majesty's pleasure. And that really was the main main problem. Because yes, you have a child with a guilty verdict, but because of her age, the main sort of goal that everyone had, that the system had, was not really to punish this 11-year-old child, but to rehabilitate her.
Yeah.
And yet no one knew what to do with her, because I'm sure you've heard of James Bulger case, where two children, again, 8, 9, killed like a 3-year-old boy and did all sorts of other awful stuff to him. So this was like the very first instance of a child criminal in the UK. So there was no precedent. So the main task was essentially, it's not, you can't, she's too young to be put in a mental hospital under the Mental Health Act. She's obviously not going to go to prison. So finally they decided that she would go to this special guarded school where she wouldn't be left alone. And that's also mostly because, as I said, she wasn't really, even by like prosecution, she wasn't really treated as a criminal. Everyone kind of like felt sorry for her because of like the way she was brought up, and sort of the fact that, she is a psychopath, like there's not much she can do about it. But she was very gifted, very intelligent, very like artistically talented, very like literature talented, literature wise, like a good writer and stuff. So because of these many capabilities, they were like, well, that's the main way we can rehabilitate her. We can, pursue these like good things about her, and I guess to an extent fix her. So they put her into that special guarded school where she spent 6 years, and then after those 6 years she went into an open prison. And finally, at the age of 23, at the age of 1980. So finally, in 1980, at the age of 23, she was released from the open prison and was allowed to carry on with her life. Obviously, she was given a new identity, because whatever. This is again a bit of like weird one, because in 1998, that identity was disclosed, because there was a book that came out, and the journalist that wrote that book actually took interviews from Mary. And somehow, through, I guess, the things she said, people found out where she was living and like her identity, and obviously harassment started. At that time, I think she had a daughter and stuff. So in response to these events, Mary Bell went to court, and in 2003, she got an order that is now actually called the Mary Bell Order. And again, that is the same order that came into play with James Bulger when he left prison, which essentially granted her and her daughter, and by extension her granddaughter, anonymity for life. So this was like legally interesting. So yeah, essentially they said that obviously when she came out in the 1980s, and again this was coming from people who worked with her during the actual prosecution and like after, that because of like intense psychotherapy and sort of people showing her like, goodwill towards her and like actual care and stuff, she actually came out very well adjusted and like a high functioning person, like a high functioning psychopath. And she sort of like got her shit together and came out like almost normal, except for the fact that she is predisposed to not have any human really deep connections with anyone, I guess. But yeah, the point of this case is really, and that's where the whole nature versus nurture comes into, is that everyone, literally everyone, from the prosecution to, I don't know, anyone on the street, everyone just attributes the fact that she came out the way she did and did what she did was because of her mother. And, she had absolutely no sort of, because even if you remember the story I told you, 30 minutes after her birth, mom was like, take this thing away. Yeah. And she never really had like any, not only mother-child sort of emotional connection with Mary, but no connection at all, not even like a grown-up to a child. Because what did she do? She made Mary do sexual favors to like, people, And I do realize this is a theme that most often occurs in my story, but so essentially she didn't even like have a chance. And obviously your most you will know this better than I do because of, you're a psychologist of sorts. A lot of your attributes, I guess, are formed very early on, and sadly for her, these were the shittiest years of her life. So really, what we are left with is the fact that yes, a small child committed heinous, awful, tragic crimes. Can we say it was 100% not her fault? I don't know. That's like the whole bigger question. But I guess the good thing that came out of this is that it showed that there is a chance of rehabilitation as long as you address the actual concerns and causes.
Yeah.
Like in a proper and sort of well thought out and organized manner, rather than just immediately going towards punishment rather than rehabilitation.
Yeah.
So yeah, since 2003, Mary Bell lived under many different names, I assume, and we're never gonna find out who she is. She might be our neighbor.
Probably not.
Not currently, but when we when we do our 3-month stints in England here and there. Yes,
wow. First of all, thank you for the story. I don't know even if I'm thankful, but or more traumatized, but I don't know where to start, but
well, say something, because usually we just...
Yeah, I mean, the main concern for me is like trying to understand how like 10, 11-year-old understands the killing. Was she killing as in killing, or was she playing some sort of game that ended tragically? But I'm trying to understand the mind, because I can't, even though she has psychopath stuff.
Yeah.
Can you really be, can you really understand killing from such an early age?
So, very good question. Something that I should have mentioned at some point was that obviously her mom, when she did sex work and Mary would witness it, her mom's specialty apparently was sadomasochism and BDSM. So strangling and stuff like that would have been something that she was exposed to. And also then again, just like, as I said, domestic violence. So, maybe her dad strangled her mom or some shit like that. But then you would then think, yes, she's only repeating what she saw. But she is she is highly intelligent. At the age of 11, she was very well advanced. And, I mean, me at 11, you at 11, like, you do already have a good grasp of what's going on. You're not like a child, and especially if you are, allegedly of higher intelligence, and it shouldn't really be, you should, I guess, understand what you're doing. But then again, because she never had that, emotional connection to the one person that she should have had it with.
Yeah.
She just, and the, predisposition to psychopathy, I guess, to her, whatever you do to other people, even if you realize you're killing them, it doesn't really matter, because there's just no connection, right?
It's interesting how she reacted to the pigeon killing, strangling incident. There is some sort of, I guess there's no connection with, no connection with like people or humans, but I guess there's connection to like animals maybe in general, not only pigeon. I guess, I don't know. And also, she has a child, like after she was released, yeah?
A child and now a granddaughter, yeah. So she was released in 1980. Her daughter was born in 1984. So 4 years after she was released. So at the age of 27.
Yeah.
That was my thing when I was reading it. I was like, that must have been so weird to her, because, someone's potentially married to her.
Probably.
But that they will never be really truly able to emotionally connect with you. That's so bizarre to me.
Yeah.
Could have been a one-night stand, you never know.
Could, yeah, and having the background of how her mother was working from home with all the different men, I
Yeah.
see that there could be high chance that it was maybe not one night stand, but like some sort of short
Yeah.
term thingy thing,
A
and
situation shop.
yeah. But again, she has a daughter and a granddaughter, which is having a person that is not emotionally connecting to people. I guess yes, she is high function, so high high functioning, so kinda learned not the connection, but I guess
Mimicking
learn
it.
how to interact and
Yeah.
how to like do human stuff.
Famously, psychopaths do very well as like CEOs and sort
Yeah.
of fast business environments and stuff like that.
So I guess it is possible, but it is crazy. It's so crazy.
There's just like this disconnect because if you look at the picture, she's such a cute baby child. She's so pretty, so
She
cute.
has murder on her face. Not gonna lie.
She's creepy but very cute. And
She is cute, but she is something that I saw a lot of horror movies that are killing people. So
no, but I just like that even when she was literally being prosecuted and the crown the crown courts or whatever, everyone still was on her side and like loved her and liked her.
yeah,
Because that is 100% everyone saying yes, it is nurture.
yeah.
But like, is it if she's a psychopath? It's not. Like we wouldn't be having this debate if it was a 19-year-old psychopath doing this. We would then just be it's a psychopath. Like we did even with, Rod Farrell or whatever. Again, a lot of personality disorders blamed it on the mother a little bit, but no one really, he was 16 at the time. No one really was like, oh, poor boy. Everyone was like, oh, this fucking monster.
But I mean, yeah, a psychopath, but also isn't that from how she was raised?
I thought you were born with psychopathy.
Probably you are, but isn't it like can be appear, I guess, different depending on your background?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So I guess it's something that she was probably born with it, but I mean the environment she was raised in just made it stronger.
Literally, Google or AI rather concludes it the best and closes this whole story, this whole topic by saying the best explanation may be that psychopathy is the result of a specific combination of nature with nurture.
Yeah.
My question will remain unanswered. But yeah, definitely interesting. I knew about Mary Bell, but I always just thought it was like a crazy baby psychopath that killed people. And then I started looking into it, and I was like, that's like really interesting because I didn't know. I knew she was released, but I didn't know, the specifics about like her mom and upbringing.
Yeah.
So that's quite fun. Or I should say.
I mean the second killing with the stabbing. Jesus, that is haunting me.
So they were trying essentially to carve an M into his body.
Yeah.
But because she was weak and whatever, I guess like she didn't cut it, but rather stabbed it, and that's why it displayed as stab marks rather than like an incision.
But I mean, how old was the boy? 3 years?
Yeah.
He's tiny.
She was very small. She was a small girlie. And he was actually, his mom said, taller than your usual 3-year-old.
Okay.
Like, taller and stronger. And the first boy was also taller, like taller than a 4-year-old would be. But they were as much as she could handle. Anyone older, they say she wouldn't have been able to.
Yeah, and also the boy that witnessed the second murder.
Yeah.
What a traumatizing life.
I know.
Do we have any information about Norma? How?
We just know that she went back to live her life.
Yeah, but again, how traumatized is she?
That's the point. I don't think she really understood. Everyone keeps saying she's borderline, R word. Normal Bell. Normal Bell.
I guess, but still, okay, maybe. Such a fucked up story.
I kind of want to read that book now, of the interviews with Mary.
Yeah,
So actually, we'll be looking into that.
I think I will add it to my to-read list, and maybe in a few thousand years I will read that.
Yeah, and next time we will be doing James Blodger.
Okay.
No. Enough murderous children for a while.
We will cover it sometime, but
Yeah.
probably. But yeah, again, thank you for
Thank you.
for this traumatizing story.
Cute little baby. That's exactly.
Is there a movie about it? There should be a movie.
There is obviously documentary,
Yeah.
BBC documentary, but that was done, I think, early 90s, so sort of before, the whole legal battle for anonymity and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think there's an episode of something else, but I didn't really watch that, nor do I remember what it is. And as to an actual movie, maybe something inspired by it, but I don't know how it works in terms that she is still alive and there is that anonymity order and stuff like that. Maybe you can only do it loosely based on what happened, but not the actual. I don't know. I should know this. I'm supposed to be in the legal field. But yeah. So thank you for listening.
Like, share, subscribe, and everything.
Slide into our DMs.
As always.
And we'll hear you again in 2 weeks.
You will hear us again.
No. I will hear you.
You will hear me, yeah. In 2 weeks.
Yep.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.